Hi everybody, I'm Daniel and I'm here with RoboChef today. We're here to talk to you about our new venture. So I want to ask you guys to take 5 seconds to think about if or when you guys have families, how much time do you want to spend on a daily basis with them? So sadly, the average US family only spends 36 minutes a day with their family, and this leaves less than an hour to prep healthy meals for them. And you know, if there's a lovely lady out there who is brave enough to have a family with me, I would want to spend more than 36 minutes with them on a daily basis. So this results in 69% of US adults and a third of US children to be obese. And I would not want to have obese children. That would be terrible. Our initial solution when we first came up with this was a robot that would cook for you. It would take fresh ingredients and instantly cook healthy meals for the working family.
So I'm going to continue where Daniel left off, and I'm going to talk about the journey that we went through from this week. Our first concept here was what we presented to you guys on Monday. So immediately the next thing we did was we took this concept and we showed it to some customers so we could start doing some validation and start poking some holes in it. So we used a variety of qualitative methods from interviews and surveys to first, we had a hypothesis that working mothers and parents would be most interested in this because they're very time busy, and it turned out that was right. So using these methods, we got more into the nuances of this. And we learned that kind of the biggest pain points for working parents is just, for example, we talked to Alice, who's a mother of 2. So every Sunday, she has to go to the store at 11 a.m. and she spends like 2 hours there buying a whole bunch of groceries for her and her son, and then she's got to lug all that stuff home, and then she's got to take it out and chop it all up, and then wash everything, and then put it in the right place, and there's a lot of time that goes into cleaning and preparation, and we think that just given some of the stats we had told you, that's unacceptable, that's unnecessary. So our team believes that we have a better way, and that you should basically, our new concept that we pivoted to, prep time, is more about cutting out the boring and repetitive parts of cooking so you can spend more time with your family and not, like appliances and other stuff in the kitchen. And so I just described our vision there, but our current mission, the one for today, is that our MVP is a robot that's held in a centralized location, so for a particular geographic area. So if people want this, processed and cleaned food, they can just order it, and then we, run it through the robot and we ship it to them. So this sort of validates that there is indeed that need. And then in the meantime, we can do more kind of R&D on the robot to create a more consumer experience that people can eventually have in their homes one day. So this sort of works well because if you're adding margin on a per transaction basis, it's a much lower barrier to entry than like, spend a whole bunch of money on this robot. We know, yeah. So I'll let you guys continue from here.
Yeah, so quickly to introduce our team, Andrew here comes with a lot of user research, user experience research, and he's interested in human-robot interactions. Daniel comes with a lot of lean startup methodology experience, and he's also worked at preventive healthcare and robotics. Audrey comes with a business background. She brings in the business and marketing perspective on the table. And I have worked for 8 years in software development, and half of it was like startups back in India. So the main thing that informed our decision were like we observed there were a few competitors and there were a few indicators in the market. There are already a lot of people doing meal kit delivery, grocery delivery, and food delivery. And there's so much stuff going on in robotics, especially robots that can be trained, not just programmed. And then there's a whole lot of voice that's going on, like robots as supporting humans, not against humans. And then recently, like in the last 1 year, Google has acquired like 8 robotic companies. It seems like they're going to be the robotics king. So it was like this intersection of robotics and food, which is we found like this is where we belong. I'll let Audrey tell you about timelines.
So how exactly are we going to execute on this idea? Well, in the first 1 to 2 years, we need funding and also a team of researchers to design and develop this industrialized robot. Initially, it's probably going to be too expensive for the average household to afford, so we're going to take on the fixed costs of maintaining the machinery, having the prep time robot do the chopping, slicing, and dicing, and then a team of people delivering these prepped groceries to locations like BART stations and schools where parents already visit, so they don't have to go out of their way to pick up the groceries. It's only going to cost them 20% more than at a retail grocery store, so, but they save much hours of time. And this will also allow us to spread the word about the product, validate customer needs, and iterate on the product. And then in the next 3 to 5 years, we'd like to sell a premium price consumer model to evangelists such as families and mom and pop restaurants. And then in years 5 and beyond, we'd like to create a lower cost model to scale and distribute. And our eventual vision is for the prep time robot to be in every household, saving time for families and individuals. So if prep time sounds like something you or someone you know would like to use, then please give some time back. We're looking for mentors, engineers, and business development people to help us turn this vision into a reality. So thank you, and we'd now like to open up to questions.
All right, now, so let me, just so I understand correctly, so you guys have a robot that will do all of the mundane parts, but I still have to cook it, right, at home. So like if it's like stir fry or pasta or whatever, I still have to prepare those kinds of things, correct?
Yeah, at least initially, because during our user research, we found that the bigger problem right now is the preparation of the food. And like Andrew mentioned, Alice, she actually does enjoy cooking. It's not like she hates cooking, and she cooks pretty much every day, but her biggest problem is like preparing and then cleaning. So that was the part we thought, let's address that first, and maybe in future iterations, the robot can do the cooking as well. That was like the small part of the problem.
Okay, so walk me through the experience. So I go to the grocery store, or I order something online.
So, yeah, that's one. Otherwise, this robot figures out what's in your inventory already and sees that according to your recipes that you want to choose, it could order stuff online automatically, and it'll have that. Or what you can do is, like, we have in our first iteration, we have like a community-centered robot, and you just subscribe to our service and tell us what you need, and we will have the robot housed, which will deliver that prepped food to you.
And then that evening, it arrives at my home. I take it out of the packaging, and I just then cook it. And then I throw away the packaging. So that's the cleaning part. So there's no cleaning.
Yes, or we deliver it to the places that you already visit, like BART stations, or you drop your kids to school. So that's where we.
Okay.
So let me first try to understand whether you're thinking of this as a robot that assists you, or whether it's kind of like it just does what you want to do. And it's coupled with a comment here. I think there's a number of devices in your kitchen which you could almost already consider a robot. Like you could say that your coffee maker is a robot. If you think of it in a certain way, you put something in, you push a button, or there's a timer, and at some time, coffee comes out. Maybe certain food processors, maybe you could think of them as robots. In other words, there's probably things that you could rename it under the robot name. What I'm wondering is, maybe you could make an inventory of all of the kind of kitchen helping, kitchen aid types of products, and try to figure out if you wanted to have not a machine that only did coffee, and not a machine that only made popcorn, and not a machine that only did, would it actually be possible to combine 2 or 3 or 4 into one? Could you get to a point where there's enough things that one machine could do that you could think of it as it's like moving closer, like could be your first version of something like that? The other thought I had was, if you're going to do that, maybe a restaurant would actually be a better target customer, because now all of a sudden the efficiency and the delivery and the way that these, so I mean, I've heard of, coffee machines that cost, $10,000, right? Or even more. So nobody buys them at home, but a restaurant could actually do it if the effectiveness of it actually works out. So that was some comments, but maybe you got some thought about, is it really standalone or is it like your helper?
I think that's still an open question that we'd sort of have to determine at this point. I think when we went from the original concept of like, oh, it automatically does everything, we were initially sort of picturing it as a helper, but the specific focus on the repetitive and boring parts makes it more like, oh, we can get that out sooner probably.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's along the time savings aspect of it.
No, it's an interesting. I like how you guys drilled down into just that being the part that most people say they like to cook, but it's really the other stuff that they don't.
Everybody likes to cook if you've got like an assistant that does everything for you, right? It's like, oh, could you like cut all that stuff up, and can you do this and this and this, and then basically you just, if you stir the pot, you call that cooking, right? Somebody just did everything else.
I just like to eat. Yeah. I like all of that then.
Okay. Well, so you did a great job basically starting with market research, and I think it's kind of an open question in terms of how this technology would come together and what would really be the first product. I understand that, but good job on thinking carefully through the market research and talking to the user to get yourself started. Let me see if there's any questions. Yeah, go ahead. Yes. Yeah, we can share.
So I had the advantage of hearing you guys talk earlier, and I kind of was thinking about the idea, and I think hearing it the second time, I kind of get it a little bit better. But one of the things that I think is like really a good selling point, because I mean, I'm a grad student. I've gotten various different meals delivered to my house, either cooked or uncooked. And one of the things I think is really nice is that, I have certain dietary limitations. And so what I'd rather have is to choose the ingredients myself. So I think one of your big selling points is it's your ingredients, your recipes, kind of your choices. And I think you guys, want to try to somehow work that in to as your sort of differentiator. You showed that there's a lot there, and a lot of those are kind of, they're just giving you ingredients, and some of them actually are already chopped, but like you have to cook whatever they're telling you to, versus it being kind of your choice. And I think that's actually like a very awesome differentiator, and you should try to see if you can kind of work that into where you're going.
Thank you.
It's interesting. I think the concepts are obviously very interesting, and I think in the general sense of the robotics side, I happen to be actually looking at a couple of robotics deals, and it's in fact one of which is actually we'll be investing, and you probably know there's actually a company called Dash Robotics. And Dash Robotics is actually out of 3 PhDs from Berkeley. And the interesting thing about that area is it's actually the toys robotics area. I also happen to be looking at another company, which is a Peter Thiel Fellow. And he's actually doing a robotics automation manufacturing processes, for instance. And he's automating the mundane side of manufacturing, for instance. And actually, that is a really interesting sector. And that itself, they're actually not automating the whole thing. They're actually automating the a portion of that. So as you guys are thinking about sort of the roadmap, as you're thinking about sort of the needs itself, I think it's a great concept. I think it's great that you guys are, it looks like you guys have some good team members in that space. But I frankly think that, as Professor Edward mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if the market is mature enough yet today, that is, to do it at home. And I think that what the capabilities you guys bring are really interesting. You may be able to apply that to some of those teams, for instance. I also see that additionally, because right now, O2O is really hot, the online to offline kind of thing. And I'm seeing that they're actually a better value proposition of like O2O. In fact, I've seen quite a few business plans, not just here in the US, but also overseas, like for instance in China. And people are there's excess labor forces out there. And people say, hey, I can do it at home, I can do it somewhere else, I can cook for people. You don't necessarily need to buy robots for that. So I think the thing is, you might want to think about like strip down, maybe a concept like what you guys are doing, maybe a robotics toy or some sort, because, obviously, you guys have the power, the might, and and the sort of the right background. But I just see that there's, that picture that I saw, that's amazing. But I'm telling you that from my senses, in terms of really kind of to home, that there's still a bit of time for that to happen. But I think given the skill sets and given all the experiences you guys have, I really encourage you, though, to apply the robotics side of your know-how, because I think that the time is now. The other thing is, the CES. So the drones market, it's really picked up. In fact, the most well-known drone UAV company, it's actually out of a Berkeley graduate in Shenzhen, and I happen to know them sort of. And we also invested in a drone company, which is actually right now their actually valuation is closing into $100 million USD. So I encourage you guys to think about. I think the robotics is really hot, but not necessarily in this particular area, but something to really think about. And then I think that you guys are in the right direction in that sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess how I'm curious about how the prep time robot would actually work. So yes, the prepping time does require humans right now, but also the human element to know, like, okay, that's a stem. I don't want to eat that. That's, the shell of the onion. I don't want that in my soup. So what do you guys envision as far as the actual quality control in what the prepped product is going to be to the consumer?
Yeah, one idea we're sort of bouncing around was perhaps people could specify, exactly how they want the food prepared, like chopped a certain way or without certain things and such.
I think we would have like an app that would, list a menu of different things, and we would have like chicken breasts and chicken legs, and we would treat these two a different way. And we would have about 4 options to do them. So if you have chicken breasts, you could dice them, slice them, or ground them. However you need it for your unique recipe. And if you have a chicken leg, we would recognize that there's a bone in there, and our robot would do whatever you need it to do from there. But we would have to program and tailor the robot to do many different kind of things. And I do understand some things have stems and stuff, but that is an engineering problem that we would have to think about, yes.
Thanks. I was just getting an idea as you're talking about this, that you could have the robot, you could have your software learn from users in some way. In particular, if you could create the metacode and then have the users specify how to utilize that. So if you had metacode that didn't know what an onion skin was, but knew that it was different from the core of the onion, and so people could click on those 2 different things and say this out, that in, almost as though you were trying to communicate without language, then, imagine you're at a foreign market or something, right? Like that.
That's a great idea. We'll think about it more. Thank you. It's awesome.